Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into something that is incredibly universal and honestly, kind of uncomfortable. We're looking at that massive, super frustrating gap between what we know is the right thing to do and what we actually end up doing. You know what I mean, right? Why do we constantly delay the actions and habits that we literally know will improve our lives? Well, we're going to trace the history of this whole problem, pulling insights from the ancient Stoics all the way up to modern thinkers to figure out how we can finally close that gap. To kick things off, Bruce Lee actually hit the nail on the head with this one. He said, "If you love life, then don't waste time, for time is what life is made of." Now, if you just read that quickly, sure, it sounds like another motivational poster you'd see hanging up in a gym. But if you really sit with it, it's a piercing indictment. He's telling us that time isn't just some empty container we pour our lives into. Time is the actual substance of life. So wasting time isn't just hitting the snooze button, it's actively destroying life itself. Crazy to think about it that way, right? Which brings us to the ultimate elephant in the room question: what are we actually doing with it? I want you to treat this idea like a mirror today. It's this quiet question running beneath everything we're looking at. We already know what's right. We know what needs doing in our careers, our relationships, our communities. And yet, we wait. We make excuses. Well, let's figure out why. Let's look at how the philosopher Musonius Rufus contrasted two totally different ways we spend our energy. The ancient Romans, they were absolutely obsessed with extravagant koi ponds and gossip, which, if you think about it, is basically the ancient equivalent of doom-scrolling luxury halls online today. But Rufus pointed out something crucial. Extravagance requires zero character. I mean, anyone with a credit card can spend, right? True impressiveness, on the other hand, is about making the hard choices. It's what you do when spending your resources actually forces you to sacrifice your ego or give something real up. And history gives us some amazing proof of this. Take the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He literally sold off the imperial palace's luxury furnishings just to pay down war debts. He chose financial responsibility over his own ego. Or, jumping to the modern era, look at Jose Mujica, the former president of Uruguay. He gave 90% of his salary to charity and drove a beat-up 25-year-old car. Not exactly an imperial chariot, right? The principle here is choosing people over spectacle. True impressiveness costs something. It's always way easier to just make a lot of noise, but these guys prove that character takes real action. All right, moving into section 1, passion versus reason. Let's look at the internal hurdles blocking our path. In Euripides' tragic play Medea, we get the absolute perfect definition of this hurdle. The quote goes, "I am well aware how terrible a crime I am about to commit, but my passion is master of my reason." Now, when the ancient Stoics talked about passion, they weren't talking about being super enthusiastic about a hobby. No, they meant this overwhelming emotional force that just seizes your mind and drives you right past the point of logic. Medea is the ultimate example of lucid madness. She sees the cliff clearly, she knows stepping off is a total disaster, but the emotion completely hijacks her reason, and she jumps anyway. That is the exact mechanism causing us to do things we end up regretting for the rest of our lives. But don't worry, the Stoics had a very practical 3-step antidote to fight that exact feeling. Number 1, see the emotion rising. Number 2, name it. And number 3, pause. There's this great historical story where a philosopher named Athenodorus told Emperor Augustus that whenever he felt angry, he should literally count the letters of the alphabet before taking any action. It's basically the ancient version of take a deep breath and count to 10, right? That crucial gap, that pause, is where our freedom actually lives. It's the space between what we feel and what we do. Seneca made a super profound observation about this pause. He said, "Whoever comes to a mirror to change himself has already changed." Think about that for a second. By simply catching yourself in the act of being hijacked, whether it's by pride, fear, anger, or greed, and actually naming it, you've already taken the very first step towards self-mastery. That pause is exactly what lets your reason slide right back into the driver's seat. Okay, section 2, even great men wait. We're going to look at the architecture of our excuses. Let's really consider how we build our excuses. If you're sitting there feeling guilty about your own analysis paralysis, let me tell you, you are in very esteemed company. George Washington wrote that no man alive wished more sincerely to see a plan adopted to abolish slavery, but he waited. I mean, was anyone better positioned to act than the leader of the nation? Marcus Aurelius wrote beautifully about his dream for a Roman society with equal rights, but he delayed. Who's got more power than the emperor? And Seneca wished Nero would grow up, but he hesitated to step in. The lesson here absolutely isn't that these figures were villains. It's that they were deeply, fundamentally human. They found highly plausible excuses to outsource the responsibility of improving the world to some unnamed future person. Think about how completely boxed in our central goal is. You know what's right, and you know you should act right now, not someday. But you're completely surrounded by these very human obstacles. Passion hijacks reason on one side. Great men delay on the other. And at the bottom, we mistake noise for action. Our excuses just entirely surround our ideals. The philosophical insights we're unpacking today aren't just telling us to do good. They are systematically dismantling every single excuse that's boxing us in. Which brings us to Section 3, Focus and the Noise. Let's talk about relentless distraction. We can actually observe this dynamic neutrally, in real time, by looking at Elon Musk. Leo Tolstoy once wrote that every thought expressed in words is a limitless force that can be either a blessing or a curse. On one side, we see the blessings of Musk's extraordinary focus, reinvigorating space travel, popularizing EVs, expanding solar energy. But on the flip side, we see the curses of that exact same limitless force when his focus collapses into noise, petty conflicts, inflammatory opinions, and endless online culture wars. Now, the Stoic perspective here isn't about judging the politics at all. It's simply about observing how indulging in all that noise creates internal and external conflict and ultimately dilutes your actual impact. So the crucial takeaway is this ultimate Stoic question of selective attention. Is this where my force belongs? You literally have to ignore the noise. You have to tune out what doesn't matter and what's completely outside your control. Why? So you can pour all of your specific talents and resources into the places where you can actually move the needle. Today, people are always bragging about listening to audiobooks at 3x speed, trying to devour 100 books a year. It's this absurd culture of hyperconsumption. But as Epictetus warned us, energy without focus is entirely meaningless. Seneca even called the enthusiastic gathering of useless knowledge a pointless affliction. Think about it. If you read 100 books and emerge no kinder and no more capable of taking action, you're just performing effort. Like Gandhi pointed out, truth requires experimentation. Reading the book is just the experiment. Actually living it out in the real world is the scale. Information without implementation, that's really just another form of noise. Moving on to Section 4, Exile as the Path. It's time to reframe our discomfort. The author Steven Pressfield frames this perfectly using the classic hero's journey. Act 1 is our ejection from a comfortable but pretty sterile starting point. Act 2, the messy middle phase, is what Pressfield calls the harrowing passage or exile. And Act 3 is the return home as a completely changed person. I really want you to pay attention to Act 2 here. That gap between knowing what you should do and actually doing it, that is not a permanent failure, that's just the harrowing second act. It is literally supposed to be resistant territory. There's actually immense comfort in this framework. As Pressfield says, if your sense of your own life is one of exile, don't panic. You are on the path. He's reminding us that we absolutely have to cross this uncomfortable territory. So when you feel that friction of knowing you need to act, but you're struggling to do it, don't retreat to the cozy rationalizations of Act 1. Lean right into it. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. And finally, Section 5, the choice to act. Let's talk about taking immediate action. When we strip away all the fancy excuses, we're left with a few core, unavoidable imperatives. Confucius tells us that flawless readiness just doesn't exist. It doesn't matter how slowly you go, just do not stop. Mother Teresa strips away the need for those grand, spectacular gestures. You want to change the world? Go home and love your family. Start exactly where you are right now. And finally, there's that incredibly striking African proverb, a roaring lion kills no game. All the noise, all the complaining, all the meticulous future planning, it means absolutely nothing without the hunt. A meaningful life is built on purposeful action taken right now, in the present moment, with whatever tools you currently have. This brings us to a thought inspired by Voltaire, who famously said we should judge a person by their questions rather than their answers. So what are the only things left to ask? Did I love enough? Did I laugh enough? Did I make a difference? Time, the very substance of our lives, is ticking away as we speak. The only question left is whether you are willing to look into that mirror, pause, reflect, and finally act. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the exact spark you need to close the gap today.